Welcome to the Get Real Podcast, your high-octane boost of full-on reality therapy for personal, business, and investing success with your host, Ron Phillips, because somebody's got to tell it like it is.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Get Real Podcast. Ron Phillips and Heather Marchant here. Another awesome show. Man, we've gotten a lot of feedback, questions from you. We really appreciate that. Another show with you in mind. This is going to be fun.
And I'll say to that too, that a lot of these come through our team, that people talk to other members of our team and say, hey, I want to learn more about this, or specifically ask about a podcast, but they don't even necessarily email our RPC Invest email. They will reach out to a member of our team, which is pretty cool. And that funnels up right to us. So,
not to say that you shouldn't, because you should. Right. Because you definitely should. But we're going to talk about a couple of things. We just had Bob Bloom on. He talked about international purchasing of real estate in the United States. But what we didn't talk about, Heather, is the difference, because I believe you just heard some of the difference between buying here and buying in other countries, which apparently is pretty dramatic difference.
Yes, I was doing some initial research, as I kind of alluded to, I guess, on that podcast with Bob Bloom, because I didn't know that Bob Bloom had all that information and knowledge to share. So super great that he had all of that information. However, I was doing some research and I had no idea that just the closing timeline alone was drastically different from buying other places in the world. Specifically, Europe is some of the research I was doing, that it takes at least 2 or 3 times as long to buy a property in Europe as it does in the United States. So,
and why? Did you hear why? Like what?
It just sounds like it sounded like more of the title work was what takes so long, is what it sounded like. They don't have title companies over there, so it's just different. It's just a different process that everything has to go through. So that's what it sounded like, but I think I got digging so deep and then I reached out to you and you said, oh yeah, let's have Bob Bloom on. And I was like, fantastic.
So I think something super interesting is that apparently we take this for granted, because I get frustrated with how long it takes to close properties here.
Yeah.
I was just talking to, we have been trying to really shorten the time frame, because I feel like with the tech that we have today, I feel like with all of the things that we have, and not to least of which is the NAR, having its own problems, and my belief that the real estate brokerage, as it has been constituted for decades, is on its way out. That's Ron's personal opinion. But if tech is coming in, which it is, it's only a matter of time until everything is going to be super tech enabled. Why the heck can't we do this faster? I'm just like, what in the world is it that takes these transactions so stinking long? And we've been talking to lenders, we've been talking to title companies, we've been talking to appraisers, we've been talking to inspectors and our sellers, trying to figure out how can we shorten this cycle for our investors and make it less painful. And then, Heather, we were talking and we were like, we probably ought to just talk through the actual escrow process, because I'm not sure if we've done it. It hasn't been for a long time. And just walk people through, what does it look like once you decide to actually buy a property?
Yeah. And I think sometimes we take for granted that this is something we do all the time. We have clients that work with us that live in California that rent, that have never purchased a property in their lives. And so they come over to us and have no concept, right? You kind of assume, if you're a real estate investor and you're getting started with your first property, you at least have some experience purchasing, but you don't always. So
not necessarily. And the experience is, it's not entirely different. It's not like wholesale different than buying your own property, but it is different. It is unique. It definitely is. So let's talk a little bit about it. Like what does this look like? We put a property under contract. What's next?
So typically you have what you call opening title. So The title company gets the contract and they start working on the preliminary title work. The lender starts working on initial disclosures, and they usually have to communicate together because the lender has to do disclosures and get fees from the title company because the title company charges fees for their work. And the lender has to have that disclosure pretty buttoned up. And so that's something that just takes a minute and some communication. And so they will get all those fees together and send out those initial disclosures before an appraisal can be ordered. And that's something clients don't really think about. They think, oh, well, this isn't closing for a while. What do you need from me right now? When it has to, for the file to start, those have to be signed. So it's an important part of the process to just, and it doesn't take very long. And I will say, Ron, they're initial, right? They're initial disclosures. So we have some clients that think that that's the gospel truth. And that's how, everything's going to shake out. Just had that happen in the last couple weeks and just explaining like, well, that's just an estimate, right? And it has to be close. There's legislation and, rules around it, but it's not going to be exactly how it shakes out.
Exactly. And I've done a lot of deals over the years, and I worked with lenders, title companies, agents, brokers. And I tell every one of them, I'm like, I'm going to be the easiest deal you've ever done in your life. Because I know what a pain in the butt it is to have somebody who's just not moving. They're just not moving. They're not signing the disclosures. They're holding everything up. So you out there, don't be that person. Get your crap into the lender, sign the documents on time. Like, help the process. Don't hinder the process.
Yes. And the initial disclosures, a couple things that have come up in the last couple weeks that I think are helpful for people to know is for if you get an initial disclosure in December and you don't close until February, and this happened on many of our files, insurance premiums went up in January. And we had to explain on just about every single one of those files, your closing costs increased because totally out of the lender's control. Or if taxes go up, or if you close on the 5th of the month and they thought you were going to close on the 31st of the previous month, so all those prorations will change. And sometimes it's pretty dramatic if the taxes and insurance are a healthy sum. So just keeping that in mind.
Okay. So we've signed a contract. We left out send in earnest money. Good Lord, people. You have to give the title company your earnest money.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't even have a deal unless there's earnest money. There's no deal, right? So if you just think you can postpone that, at some point, you don't have a deal. You're working on something that isn't even isn't even real. So take care of that initial earnest money deposit. Send that thing in immediately. Right after that, you're going to go into this, what Heather was just talking about, where we open up escrow and title company works on their stuff. The lender starts working on their stuff. Once you sign the disclosures, the next thing is to order an appraisal and the inspection, right? Those things can be ordered same time. In a perfect world, the inspector and the appraiser go out at the same time, and that never happens. I say never, but it doesn't happen very often. But it would be super cool if that happened, right? And then you're going to get a couple of reports back.
Yeah.
And I find if people are prepared for the appraisal in the appropriate way and the inspection report in the appropriate way, that this isn't that big of a deal. But if people aren't prepared for this, it can be a very big deal.
Yep.
You should expect that the inspection report is going to have items wrong. That's literally what their job is to go find things wrong. So
nitpick the crap out of it.
If there's things wrong, which there's going to be, don't freak out. That's literally what you paid these people to do, is go find the things that are wrong so we can get them fixed before you close.
And I feel like if it comes back with nothing on it, that's when we are like, hey, we need to call this inspector. Like, we have some questions. Like, there should be a good amount of items. And if there's not,
we have some accusations. We have some accusations for you because this is not right.
Yes.
Most of that stuff gets put. So you get this huge, like, I don't know how many pages these are, 20 plus pages or something like that. They're big. But you can read the whole thing, but they put the real problem stuff on the summary, which is usually the first couple of pages, whatever it is. And that's what I usually look at. I look at those. And then if I need more detail on a something in that section, I can go down in the report, see the pictures, look at what's going on. Usually that's the things that you turn in and you say, hey, I want this stuff fixed. Again, not the end of the world. Like that is what you want to have happen. Okay. So I think people freak out. They're like, oh my gosh, there's all this stuff wrong with this property. It can be a new property and they're going to find stuff wrong with it. I promise. It's literally what their job is. And then you have the appraisal.
Oh,
now,
yes.
I'm going to withhold my angst for the government and them trying desperately to fix a problem that they themselves caused in 2008 by destroying the appraisal system. I'm not going to talk about that today. And by telling you that I'm not going to talk about it, I already talked about it. It is a problem. But you're going to get an appraisal. Occasionally, you're going to get a crappy appraisal. And why are you going to get a crappy appraisal sometimes? It's because they play Russian roulette now with appraisers. And sometimes there is a bullet in the chamber when they pull the trigger.
Yep.
And that bullet is a crappy appraiser who only has a job appraising because of Russian roulette. That's it.
And we should talk a little bit about those poor appraisals. And I think one example I can think of in the last few years is when a seller said the appraiser never even went into the property and they did the appraisal. Yep. They call them drive-bys. And those have happened.
But in that case, it's more like a drive-by shooting in that case. It's not a positive drive-by.
No. Well, I don't know if a but it's frustrating because, as all of you know, it varies greatly on what a property is worth based on the condition and the major mechanicals and the shape they're in and
verifying the bedrooms
and
verifying the bathrooms,
square footage,
and verifying the square footage. I mean, like all the things you need to enter the house to do. Oh my gosh. So typically you're going to get a good appraisal. Occasionally there are appraisers out there who have a couple of problems. The first one Heather just mentioned, they just don't like to work, so they don't do their job. The second type are ones who are irritated that another human being is making more money than them.
Yes, I was going to go for that for number 2 also. Yes.
That is number 2. And those people, no matter what the comps are, will appraise the property lower because they just don't feel like people should be making money.
And I have I have heard this directly. Like, this is what they said, that it was just purchased at, this many days ago for X amount of dollars. And now they're turning around and selling it for Y. I'm like, what does that have to do with what it's worth? It makes no sense.
With your job.
Yes.
What does it have to do with your job, sir or madam?
Yeah.
Please explain, because your job is to verify the value of the property, not the income of someone else. That's literally not your job.
Yep. 100%.
I said I was not going to get upset about that.
Well, the third one, to not belabor that one, because I think that it gets both of us riled up. But the third one I would say is when the appraiser goes in and just has an opinion about, like, oh, well, I think you should fix this, even though it has nothing to do with the appraisal.
I'm like, dude, stay in your lane. There was an inspection done. You are not the inspector. You are the appraiser.
Yes.
Mother.
And usually it's on the inspection, Ron. Usually that thing is already found. The problem with it, because people may say, well, what's the big deal? The seller's going to fix it anyway, is the buyer's charged another fee for the appraiser to go back and verify. And man, it sure sounds like they like to just have the buyer pay a trip fee. Like, oh, well, you need to fix this thing that you already knew about. And I'll come back and you'll pay me an additional $175 and I'll come back and verify that it's done. And then my appraisal will be final.
And you probably don't want to pay that fee, but you have to now
you
because
have
it's
to.
on the report.
Yep.
And the bank needs the person to go out there and verify it. So we dislike those three types of appraisers. Now, the challenge is that we must play Russian roulette. And occasionally we're going to get these people who a few years ago, well, it wasn't a few, but that was a long time ago.
It was.
This has been broken for a lot of years, people. It's been broken for a lot of years.
We're so
I
old.
have been complaining about this for so long.
Just
it
decades.
Used to be that when you would, pre 2009, when you would have someone like this show up in your life, what would you do? What would you do if someone from any trade showed up and did a remarkably crappy job on that thing which you hired them to do? What would you do?
You think you could say, I don't want to pay you, or I want to pay you less, or you can't.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
When I hire someone to come do something at my home and they screw it up or break something or do I'm not paying you if you just destroyed whatever it is that I asked you to fix, or you destroyed something else. As a matter of fact, if you destroyed something else, you're going to pay for that in addition.
Yep.
But if you did a crappy job, not only am I not paying you, I'm never calling you again.
Yes.
And I should have the choice to never call you again. But
yep.
Because
and you'd
of our
probably
government,
tell your neighbors.
that dude. Well, I'm sorry. They're not all men. They are mostly men. That individual gets put right back in the gun to shoot another round through the head of the next person who happens to pull the trigger on their bullet. Yep. That is literally what happens. And there's not a whole hell of a lot you can do about it.
We do one thing that helps, but you're right, Ron. You can't totally control it. But we put a short list of appraisers we've worked with in the past that do a good job. I think it's a minimum of 3 that the bank likes. But you can have those have preferential treatment. But if those 3 are on vacation or have other jobs and aren't able to, like other appraisals, and can't get out there in time, then it goes to Russian roulette every time.
And occasionally we can fire them out of the system. But my gosh, it shouldn't be this hard to get rid of incompetent people. But unfortunately, those people just continue to get paid. Okay. Now we've moved all the way through the escrow process to the appraisal. We've gotten that back. What's next, Heather?
So once we have all those, we have the appraisal back and it comes in at value, then we move forward. And I wanted to just talk about this for a second, Ron. When it comes in low, this has been something really interesting that I've seen is I've had clients think that that's a negative in some way, that because it came in low, something's wrong, that the seller did something wrong in pricing the property, or that somehow this is a negative thing. And we usually have to explain, like, hey, you just got a sale, like you just got the property for a discounted price. And
it's Black Friday. Congratulations.
Congratulations. So then we move. Go ahead.
Generally speaking, they are at value. Typically, you just got a crappy appraiser. And, a lot of times the sellers don't want to go through time out. What happens if you get a low appraisal? The first thing is you can submit comparable sales, and you can what's the word?
Kind of like a rebuttal. A rebuttal?
Yeah, you can rebut the appraisal. Now the problem is that the crappy appraiser,
number one,
the crappy appraiser doesn't care. And because they're getting paid anyway. It doesn't make any difference. And they're going to get reloaded in the Russian roulette again, no matter what. So they don't care. In order to affect change, they would actually have to look at the rebuttal, which is going to take them time. They're going to have to admit that they were wrong, which requires a little bit of humility. Mm-hmm. Neither of those occur hardly ever.
Yeah, it's like 20% of the time, I would say, that works. Yeah. It's not very often.
So when it doesn't work, now we have this deal, and typically the sellers, unless it's just out of control, the sellers are like, let's just move on. Yep. Right?
I think we had one this week.
So you get a Black Friday sale.
Yeah, we had one this week where the appraiser was off by like a couple $100s. It was like low, but like by $400. I've never seen that before. And well, if I have, it's been a while.
The most lazy.
I know.
You have to be so lazy.
I know.
Okay, we need to move on. I'm sorry.
Well,
Can we just let's just get past? Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. I have one more thing I want to talk about. Is that as far as pricing these, when we talk with these rehabbers, sometimes they know that there's not a lot of comps. Sometimes, like just one that happened recently, it was a duplex, and they knew there wasn't a lot of duplexes in the area. They knew that an appraiser probably wouldn't have a whole lot to work with. And so they priced it and said, well, maybe we'll get some value because we've remodeled this and it's beautiful. And so let's go for a higher price. And we didn't get it. They gave the price of the closest duplex, and whatever it was priced at, that was the comp they used. And so our client got a deal, mm-hmm. So that happens sometimes. There's just a limitation on the type of property and what's available.
Okay. I'm done. All right. I was going to say something, but I'm not going to now.
Okay. Well, so then you move past this squirrely stage of inspection and appraisal.
And it usually isn't, people. It usually isn't. Usually this goes smoothly. So we're just prepping you for if it doesn't. This is what happens. Yes, okay.
Exactly. Go ahead. Yeah. But we come out of that, and that's usually where, if things go wrong, they go wrong there is probably what I use squirrely for. So then we come out of it, and we are just at this point really just finalizing with the lender and finalizing with title. And so the lender will say, okay, we're going to submit everything to underwriting. The underwriting department goes through, they review everything and say, oh, we need a couple of documents. Usually it has to do with bank statements or HOA statements. That's what it feels like. That's what comes out of underwriting is like
proof of
documentation
funds or of some sort, something. It's not usually a big deal.
It's not.
It's something where people go, and here's the thing. The people that we do business with, they have good credit.
Yeah.
They have assets, and they don't understand.
It's so true.
It comes back from the bank and they're like, wait a second. I make a lot of money. I have cash in the bank. I have a great credit score. What do you need this for?
Yep.
So let me tell you what they need it for. They're not trying to be a pain. They are being a pain in the butt, but they're not trying to be a pain in the butt. They have to take this loan and sell it on the secondary market, which means the secondary market wants X, Y, and Z, and it has to have X, Y, and Z. And the X, Y, and Z has to be in the type that they want, the font size that they want. Everything has to be what they want. And if it isn't, then they have to get a couple of extra things to make it pretty so they can sell it on the secondary market and not have a problem. Yep. That is why. It is not because you don't make enough money, you don't have enough cash, you don't have a good enough credit score, you're not a great person. It's none of that stuff. It is literally because they have to sell it on the secondary market and something isn't fitting right. So they need an extra piece to make it fit right. That's literally it.
Check in a box. I agree.
Yep.
So that part is important because I see a lot of delays in this part of the process often where the client's like, oh, I'm busy. I have plans. And I think at this point, it feels tiring. You've submitted everything up front, and this is a second ask. And sometimes it's a third ask, and you're kind of worn out. And so this is the time.
You're irritated. Let's be honest. You're irritated. I've been there. I'm irritated too sometimes.
So you just have to do it and not wait. That's the important part.
Yeah.
Get it done.
And do it like Brian Tracy says. Just touch it once.
Yeah.
As soon as it comes in, I'm just going to do this right now.
Right now.
And I'm going to send it in right now. And then it's done. I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yes. And then your loan's in for final approval, and then you're clear to close. And that's when the title company's calling you and saying, "Hey, we're ready.
Mhm.
When can you meet with a notary?" That is one piece that, is a little bit different when you're out of the country. In my little reading I did, you have to have a notary that is going to meet with you. And it's interesting because they just said, Google it. Like, Google in your country where the notaries are. I thought that was so interesting. I've
Mhm.
always thought you had to go to an embassy. And I mean, it could be different per country, but he said, yeah, just Google where a US notary is in your country, and they're not that hard to find. Thought that was really,
Hmm. That
really
is interesting.
interesting. I know. So you have to have that notary. And I hope that changes, Ron. I hope soon that changes, that you don't have to
So
meet with a notary.
here's the thing: we're trying to make everything. We've talked about our tech before. We are trying very hard to shorten this process, make it easier.
Mm-hmm.
We have some things coming up that we will tell you about. As soon as I get them nailed down, I will come on here, and you will be the second or third to know. You will not be the first,
Let's be
but you'll be the second or third to know. I'm just being honest. I mean, that's just the honest way to be. Okay, so and then you close celebration, right?
Celebrate
It's
the time.
fantastic, and everything starts down the road.
Mm-hmm.
We left one thing out in there, towards when you've gotten your reports and everything like that. You reach out, we'll help you. You reach out to the property manager. You need to sign a property management agreement. That way, once you close, you can actually start receiving funds. One thing people don't understand is if you don't sign that agreement, they can't send you money. I mean, like legally, they can't send you money
Or collect
So,
rent.
Yeah, that's a really important thing. They
Minor
can't
problem.
represent you if you don't have an agreement with them.
Yeah.
Um,
And some
but
of
that's the
them,
escrow process. It's not that hard, at least here. I guess
Yeah.
in Mother England, it's difficult.
yeah, and
Now
sometimes
somebody's
the
going to
PM,
write in and they'll be like, "It's not that hard, Ron." Like I don't know. I've never bought anything in England or anywhere else in Europe or anywhere else in the world, so I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. I think it's just helpful to look at the differences, and it seems like a lot, but when you have someone that's done it before holding your hand, that's the feedback we get from clients, is just
Mm-hmm.
knowing that someone else is walking through this, making sure that all the documents are signed, that you have a copy of the home warranty or the builder warranty, and that all that stuff that you have in your hands.
Yeah,
Super helpful.
We've done this thousands of times. And, well, I was about ready to say we've seen it all. That's not true. Frequently, we see something new, and I'm like, wow, I literally thought I had seen everything. I'm convinced you will never see everything in real estate because sometimes things are just unique.
I know.
But we've seen a lot. We've seen a lot. And if we don't know how to do it, I know enough people that someone has been through that unique, crazy situation. So we made that sound a lot more difficult than it is. I think that if you did that on your own and you didn't have any experience, it probably would be a little tricky.
Mm-hmm.
We make it super easy as you can make something like this. We make it easier, and we are trying to find ways to make it even easier and faster and less painful. Because let's face it, it is a little bit painful.
Yeah.
But the benefit on the other side of it is so awesome. It is so awesome. Heather, you just heard from somebody who's like, can't believe how this has changed their lives. We hear about this like rather routinely, but I think this last week you heard from somebody.
I did. And he listens to the podcast. So I told him, I'm like, oh, I'll make sure I mention this on the podcast.
Shout out. Come on.
He started laughing. So Jerry, this one's for you.
Jerry.
He just said that, he sold his business, has income still coming in from his business. And he said, I haven't even paid taxes, Heather. He's like, since he started working with us, he hasn't had to pay any taxes. And that's massive when you're a business owner. And really for anybody, let's be honest, anybody, taxes are a big part of your liability, every year.
I don't know why I thought this, but You said taxes are a buh, and then I was like, no way, Heather is going to say that on the podcast, and I'm because I was going to agree with you.
You're going to
apparently I was because they are. Heather did it the right way, though. I'm the potty mouth on the show, and I apologize for that. Heather keeps it clean all the time, so I'm not even sure why I thought that. But
that's so funny. Sometime for dramatic effect, Ron. Sometime, I don't know. But I think that his feedback was, I just think everybody should do this, and he's been trying to get his family on board and friends. And man, I have a couple clients that talk to so many people and connect me with so many people, but then get really agitated when they don't move forward. I have a couple clients like that they'll say, wait, did they never call you? I'm like, well, no, but that's okay. Like, that's all right. They weren't ready. And they're like, I don't understand. This is the best thing that has happened to me. I mean, that's really, that's how they feel. It's like practically like preaching, right? Like, I want everybody to do this because it's changed my trajectory of my financial life. But in a lot of ways, that translates into changing personal life. If you don't have to be married to your work, I'm
telling you, I sit outside. Well, Heather knows this because we have meetings all the time and I'm outside. She's like, gosh, dang it, Ron. I sit outside and it's such a beautiful place. I live in such a gorgeous place. I've been so blessed, but most of that has come from owning real estate.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing. We come on here every week and we preach to you and anybody who will listen. And our company, I mean, the company exists for that. Like, that's what we do, trying to help people. We will help anyone, but we can't help everyone. So don't let indecision or whatever it is stop you from having an experience like Jerry.
Yeah.
And on that note, till next week, get out there and make something happen.
This has been the Get Real Podcast. To subscribe and for more information, including a list of all episodes, go to getrealestatesuccess.com.